Hello everyone, and welcome to week 5 of English 121. This week you're going to watch this lecture on setting, and then I'd like you to actively read the selection from chapter 4 on setting, found on pages 120 to 123. Then I'd like you to actively read Kate Chopin's short story, The Storm, 123 to 127, and then Jack London's amazing short story, To Build a Fire, 127 to 137. Your assignments this week: first you're going to participate in a conversation on setting and To Build a Fire, and then you're going to write a reflection on Kate Chopin's short story, setting, and Kate Chopin's short story, The Storm. Just know that you will need access to your e-text, as was required as part of this course, so be prepared to access that in order to complete your reflection journal this week. By the end of this week, you should feel comfortable identifying and critically analyzing setting in a short story. So start off by watching the setting video and reading pages 120 to 123. Overall, setting is the time and a place, when a story takes place. As we'll see in these two stories, setting is not only time and place, though it can also refer to weather conditions. And those conditions can actually become a character in the story. There's a lot of the setting can also be used to create an atmosphere in the story. It certainly does so in Jack London's story and in Kate Chopin's story this week. The atmosphere is a dominant mood or feeling that really pervades the literary work. So the storm really has this kind of violent, intense feeling of a storm coming in, and To Build a Fire has the stark, survivalism that happens in extreme cold weather. One really obvious example of when setting is a major element in a story is when you're looking at historical fiction. So if the story is set in another time and place, it's really important that we know when that the reader really understands the setting, because it really affects your understanding of the story. Another place is in regionalism, and an example of a regional writer is Kate Chopin. So it matters when you read The Storm to know what time period this takes place and where it takes place. Kate Chopin is really is known for writing about Louisiana, and it's important that you know this when you're reading her. Okay, naturalism is also a form of writing that uses setting as a very important character, or a very important part of the story. So naturalists present social environment as a determining factor in human behavior. So it's the idea of this grim realism, like as we'll see in To Build a Fire, because Jack London is a naturalist. We'll see how the fate of the man and the dog are set at the beginning of the story. Their natural fate, the way they'll naturally react to what's happening to them, is part of their essence and can't be changed. So it's really important to think about that when you're reading this week. When you're writing about setting, you want to think, how does the setting motivate the plot of the story? Does the exterior setting reveal anything about a character's inner reality? Really think about this when you're reading The Storm. How does the setting change as the plot progresses? Sometimes the setting and our view of the setting changes as the plot progresses. This is another checklist you should print out and have available to you, so that when you are writing about setting, you're using the proper terminology, you're asking the right questions. Next week I will be introducing our first paper. Know that when you write your paper, you are expected to use these sorts of questions and to use proper terminology from the glossary. Make sure you use that version of the terminology rather than what you Google and find on the internet, okay? So when you look at setting, find out, where does the story take place? What does the setting suggest about the characters' lives? Are there significant differences in the setting for different characters? What does this suggest about each character? When does the story take place? Is the time of year or time of day significant? Does the weather play a meaningful role in the story's action? What is the protagonist's relationship to the setting? Does the setting of the story in some way compel the protagonist into action? Does the story's time or place suggest something about the character of the protagonist? Does a change in the setting during the story suggest some internal change in the protagonist? Alright guys, so this week your first assignment is to join a conversation about setting in To Build a Fire. Please answer the following questions about Jack London's short story To Build a Fire. One thing to think about when you're responding, you need to use quotations from the text to support your answers. You also, please don't worry about your opinions about the text. Remember, this isn't where you're going to talk about how you feel, if it's slow-paced or fast-paced. Unless it helps you prove your answer to the question, it's irrelevant, okay? I know it's hard because we're having a discussion, but think about it as if we were in class and I ask you to answer this question. It's important that you answer it, and if we were in class, you would be looking at your book and tell me what page you're on, and you'd read a quotation from that text to support what you're saying. So these are the questions I'd like you to answer. Roughly how much of London's story is devoted to describing the setting? What particular details make it memorable? To what extent does setting determine what happens in the story? So really think about what quotations can you use to support an answer to this question. In To Build the Fire, the man is never given a name. What is the effect of his simply being called the man throughout the story? From the evidence London gives us, what stages are involved in the process of freezing to death? What does the story gain from London's detailed account of the man's experience with each successive stage? What are the most serious mistakes the man makes? To what factors do you attribute these errors? And finally, how would the story be different if it were told by the dog? I also am including a link here to a great place where you can get more information about Jack London and his biography. Jack London is a local writer. His former house is located in Glen Ellen, Jack London State Historic Park, and it's a great place to visit, but it's a great place to actually learn about Jack London. I'm a Jack London scholar, and so if you ever have questions or you're looking for more things to read by Jack London, I'd love to talk to you about it. Alright guys, after you finish your conversation, I'd like you to write a reflection journal about setting in Kate Chopin's The Storm. So after reading The Storm, in the interactive book, click on Watch the Video. It's at the end of your text, of your short story. Answer at least 5 of the questions that are asked on the reading, interpreting, and writing tabs. There's all kinds of questions that come up. Write down a few that interest you. You need to answer at least 5 questions. If you are looking for extra credit, you can find, after you've completed the first reflection journal, you can find Kate Chopin's connected story at the Cadian Ball and explain how these short stories are connected and how Chopin uses setting in both texts. Or you can read The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin and discuss how Chopin uses setting differently in this short story than she does in The Storm. Because remember, setting can also be time. Alright, that's it for this week, guys. You guys are going to be introduced to your first writing assignment next week, so stay tuned. And I will give you a lot of details about how to write about fiction in the process. There will be a little extra reading that is just in, it's just a great essay on how to write a really good paper about literature. So that's it for this week. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I look forward to seeing you online.